Katherine, these are fairly explosive allegations.
Yes, they certainly are. Broke late last night with the Telegraph front page, saying fundamentally that Matt Hancock, who was, of course, Health Secretary, ignored the advice of Chris Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer, to test everybody going into a care home. Now, that, of course, is pretty damning, and it has come from 100,000 WhatsApp messages that journalist Isabel Oakeshott handed over to the Telegraph. Now, Isabel co-wrote Matt Hancock's pandemic diaries along with him, and so was previously very friendly with him, and now that has obviously soured. Now, Matt Hancock's team are absolutely incandescent with rage. They're saying that this is flat out wrong, that the story has been distorted because there's a WhatsApp message referring to a meeting. They say in that meeting, Matt Hancock was told, although he wanted to test everybody going into care homes, that they simply didn't have the capacity, and that is why he was therefore only able to test people going into care homes that were coming in from hospital. So they are very angry. They're threatening legal action. Isabel Oakeshott apparently would have signed a non-disclosure agreement and was writing in Matt Hancock's support when the pandemic diaries came out of basically that history would reflect that he'd done his best. But that looks rather different today.
It's interesting because Matt Hancock's team is saying the proper avenue to discuss all of this is not on the front pages of newspapers, but it is in this COVID inquiry, which is now underway. Hancock has said he's handed over all of these messages to the inquiry now. Do we have any indication when we might be seeing sort of the more dispassionate analysis?
Well, we really don't, because this inquiry looks set to continue for some considerable time. And of course, many people feel very strongly that lockdown was badly handled. People lost relatives. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of emotion around this, of course. So I think ultimately we will have to wait for the inquiry, but clearly Matt Hancock has been hoping to sort of reset his life, going into the jungle, putting out these very extensive pandemic diaries in which he basically said that he did the best he could. And it is quite extraordinary now that the person that co-wrote those diaries has now changed her tune completely and is saying we need to get this out into the public domain now. Of course, the Telegraph has been fairly critical of lockdown and the effects that it has had, so that suits their particular agenda.
Of course, Isabel Oakeshott is someone who's been very critical of lockdown policy as well. She was one of the foremost journalists in the country throughout the course of the pandemic, scrutinising those government decisions. Might we now take a look at Matt Hancock and perhaps the wisdom of his decision to hand over 100,000 of his own messages to a journalist who, let's face it, he profoundly disagreed with on the signature policy of the last 3 years? Was it the wisest decision of Matt Hancock to work with Isabel Oakeshott on his diaries?
Well, today it would seem not. In retrospect, Isabel Oakeshott said that she had done the work for nothing, but that she would be remunerated in other ways, whatever that meant. But it is quite extraordinary, and they are incredibly, incredibly angry because it basically looks like these stories coming out now undo what Matt Hancock thought was his sort of rehabilitation with the public, or so he hoped, in the jungle and with the diaries, his side of the story. But I do think that, it is when the inquiry finally reports that all what happened, what didn't happen, what should have happened, what should have been done differently, will be laid out clearly in a dispassionate fashion.